Hey everyone, it's Stun Types, and today, instead of doing a top 10 best decks, I'm going to be ranking what I consider to be all the decks in the game right now that are worth mentioning, either because they are good or because they are decks that people will probably want to hear about. If a deck's not on the list, one, it's probably bad. Actually, I'm going to add in Cloth Electrode as well. This will be instead of the Cloth. Oh, I just missed it. Instead of Cloth Cramorant or whatever it's called. Um, And so that deck, I believe, is under other, like generally classified there. But I will pop it in, and just so you know, that is the deck I'm talking about. Outside of that, let's just hop right in. This is on Trainer Hill. Pretty interesting. I think it got reworked. Previously, it was a little glitchy. Not like too bad, but a little weird. But it should be good now. And so let's just hop right into things. I will actually talk about the tiers. There is 5 tiers. I cannot change the tiers. It's S, A, B, C, D. S tier is okay, S tier is Charizard, right? Charizard Pidgeot. Charizard Barrel's not on here. Charizard Pidgeot sometimes plays Barrel. This is definitely the best deck in the game. I, I don't know. You could. It's not like absurd if you say it's not, but it probably is. And it's like probably in its own tier. It can really beat anything. Any like random deck you throw at it, it'll probably be able to beat. And it is able to play lots of different decks, and is just very versatile and it can just beat everything, right? So yeah, not too much to say about that. A tier is good, can really compete against general decks and pretty good against like the meta decks and just pretty solid. B tier is like, I don't know, I guess A tier it needs to be like above average though. B is like just whatever. Pretty solid deck, has probably some inconsistencies, some downsides that like just don't have like really high upside. C is not super great, but can be played. Decks that just I'm not so high on. I think C tier will probably be the most controversial, and then D tier is bad. So yeah, let's just start going through the decks, and I'm gonna say Chip Excalibur is an A tier deck, and I will try to order things, but keep in mind if they're on the same tier, it doesn't matter too much. Chip Excalibur is a pretty good deck. Pretty consistent, but can be like Excaliburs can be targeted. It's played a decent amount. It's not really targeted anywhere near as much as Charizard. It's not anywhere near as good as Charizard, in my opinion, either, but or as highly played. So people just don't really need to target it as much. But if people started targeting this deck, it would just be really bad. It doesn't have a lot of versatility or resilience, but it has some, and so it's a pretty solid deck. Gardevoir, I guess I'll also put an A tier. I think Gardevoir is a decent deck. It I don't know, it loses to Lost Vacuum. That's one of the things I like to bring up a lot, but let's be honest, that's not a huge deal. Um, it's not like it auto loses to Lost Vacuum or anything, but yeah, outside of that, it's just a pretty solid deck. It has single prizes that take one shots. That's always good. It loses to certain spread things, and there are certain things that just can go badly for it, and it's also a slower deck. Same thing, Lugia Archeops. I think Lugia Archeops, Gardevoir, Chimpap, Excalibur are all kind of similar. They obviously have differences. Lugia Archeops is the least consistent of them. Gardevoir is probably the slowest, and Chimpab Excalibur needs a multi-prizer to attack, but they are kind of like one-shot focused decks that do need some setup. But yeah, they're all pretty solid decks. They are none of them are my deck, my style of deck, but they are all pretty good. Another A tier deck, I will say Giratina Lost Zone box. Um, and oh, I need to order these. And I'm actually going to put Chimpo last. I'm not a big fan of this deck. No, I mean, I don't think it's bad, but it lacks a lot of like gust. It lacks much gust at all, which I think hurts it. And I'll actually move Gardevoir down. I don't think Gardevoir is a bad deck, but I'm not like a massive fan of it. It's a little slow, and so while it can make comebacks, it's whatever. Lugia Arcaps, I guess I'll leave here. I don't know. I really think you could order these any way you want, and I'm not really sure really how I feel about this, but I think these are like the next best decks, I think. Oh, and then Pidgeot Control. So Pidgeot Control is really good. Um, and I think that's it for and Arceus Giratina. So these are the next 6 best decks. I think I'm looking down below. Lost Zone Box Charizard is pretty solid, but it's not really played very much, so it's a little hard to say. And I have not played as much. Maybe that's me just not being as informed about it. I think it's a pretty solid deck, but I'll put it at the top of B tier for now. But yeah, I think Pidgeot Control is pretty good. It's hard to play. It's a little harder to rank. It's like one of the harder decks to play. Chimp is like pretty easy to play, so I could see it like higher. I'm actually gonna move Lugia down a little. I'm just kind of like checking decks around. I think Pidgeot's really good if you know how to play it, but it's pretty hard to play, so I'll just kind of slot it somewhere in the middle here. As I said, I think these decks you can kind of swap around however you want, but A tier is these decks. I think that like more the super straightforward decks that don't have as high upside are worse. I'll move this back down. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. Out of these decks, I'll say though, Lugia Archeops, Temporal, Excalibur, Gardevoir, kind of all similar. They obviously have differences right there. They have like different attackers, different engines, different just styles of play, but they are designed to take one shots with generally single priors, the Gardevoir and Chinchino, or I guess like the Drifloon and Chinchino, and then you do need your stage 2 to set up to like get going, and you could say the same thing for Pidgeot, but that's kind of weird. I wouldn't really compare those decks. So Tempo Excalibur is it is kind of reliant a little on luck as well. I think they're all kind of reliant on luck to get off to a faster start. They will struggle to always get like exactly what they want turn 2. Gym-Pep Excalibur can do it a lot of the time, but they, again, it is a 2-prizer. The Giratina decks, I think Giratina V-Star is a really powerful attacker. It has some of the best, if not the best, raw stats in the game, so it's just really good. There's not too much else to say about it. Giratina Lost Zone box can make better use of the Lost Zone stuff and Giratina and just like use Giratina to its fullest. It has enough versatility and enough consistency and power to be able to really handle any deck in the game, in my opinion. It's not like amazing against Charizard, though it can kind of struggle, but it's pretty good. And then in Pidgeot control here is obviously you have a lot of different things going on with Pidgeot control. You have Pidgeot EX itself, which people can sometimes target down, which can be an issue, but it's not that big of an issue. Um, I think it's really good. It's arguably the best deck in the game. It's arguably the same deck as Charizard Pidgeot, honestly. If you've seen some of the Charizard Pidgeot decks and the Pidgeot control decks, you'll sometimes see Radiant Charizard going in Pidgeot control. That's pretty common. You'll sometimes see Charizard EX in Pidgeot control, I guess. I don't even know if it's Pidgeot control. And then you'll see like all sorts of weird text in Charizard Pidgeot. You see Regieleki, Airy. Those aren't uncommon, but then sometimes you could see even Mimikyu, Mawile, Luxray V, all sorts of weird stuff. So Charizard, Pidgeot, and Pidgeot control are similar, and Pidgeot EX is just really solid in the meta right now. There's no way to really stop it. And there's TM Devolution. I think that will see more play, or at least could have. I think that would have been a card that could be really good right now. Also, that does really mess with Chim-Pep Excalibur, which is bad for it. I'm going to move Lugia up one. So then in B tier, I said Lost Zone Charizard box. I think Lost Zone box. I think Roaring Moon to Dunsparce is an all right deck. This is not a deck I've played against or with too much. It's like kind of weird. I guess it is the best way to play Roaring Moon. I don't think it's that much better or worse than the regular Roaring Moon, but that's the way people are playing it and the way people like to play it. You have a better late game, but a worse early game. So yeah. Future Box and then Future Hands. I guess Future Box is less consistent but has more options. Future Hands. I often group these decks together, but Limitless and a lot of people group them differently. And by the way, this is the Play Limitless rankings. Also, quick reminder to subscribe to the channel if you watch my videos. If you have not seen my other ones, I'd recommend you check them out. But if you've seen my videos a few times, then why not subscribe so you won't miss them in the future? But and like the video as well if you're enjoying it. And also comment down below your thoughts on the tier list once you finish watching the video. I'd love to hear that. But Future Hand it's like pretty solid. Spethazadu, I think this deck's good. Better than the average player, but I don't think it's like super broken or anything. Snorlax Stall or Snorlax Control, pretty good. Arceus, this is Arceus Box. Arceus Armor Rouge. I guess Arceus Armor Rouge I'd put here. I guess I'd put Arceus Box here. Yeah, that's fine. I might end up moving a deck here down or something. But these decks, I think Lost Box Charizard's really solid, and Lost Zone Box, which is, I guess, Lost Zone Box, basic box with the Radiant Greninja. Lost Box Charizard is, I'm pretty sure, with Radiant Charizard, not Charizard EX. That's not really a deck played very often. But Lost Zone with Charizard, Radiant Charizard is very good. Radiant Charizard currently covers a lot of weaknesses of the deck because you will struggle to get big one shots with single prizers and like cheap energy and stuff. I think because you have Roaring Moon EX that like damages itself a lot and gives us multiple prizes, it's a bit of an issue. And then you have like Hoopa and you have various issues, but very solid attackers. I would say Snorlax, Staller, Controller is pretty good. I think Arceus Box. Arceus Box is a bit of a weird deck, usually alone Vulpix V-Star, but it's a pretty solid deck. You can run this with like no other attackers. So I'll put it here. Arceus Armouge. I think Arceus Armouge is actually really good. It's a really fun deck. It's probably my favorite deck to play right now. You have enough options, but you have consistency. The issue is you don't have like super great consistency or super great payoff, so there are times when you're just not really able to do enough. So it's not an A tier deck, but I think it's a pretty good deck and one that is viewed as a rogue deck. It's not exactly a rogue deck though. Future Hands, I actually don't think is very good. I'm gonna bump this down to C. I honestly don't think Roaring Moon to Dunsparce is that good. I'll leave it near the bottom of B. And Espathrazadu will be here right below Snorlax. So there we go. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Espathrazadu is 11. Big sad, not in top 10. That's fine. Yeah, so this is my top 10. There you go. I guess Armouge making it in, and Lost Zone Charizard, which I do think is better than the regular Lost Zone box. I honestly just am not a big fan of the way people are playing Lost Zone box right now. I think, I think it has a lot of potential. Um, but I don't know. It's not really being explored to the fullest. I think people have kind of settled on a list that to me just doesn't seem super great, or at least doesn't. Maybe is the best way to play it, and maybe it just isn't as good as I think it could be. But yeah, I've seen lists with like more different attackers, which I think are interesting. Specifically, some of the future stuff in Mixie and some of that, which I do think is pretty nice outside of just Iron Hands EX. But I think B decks, these B tier decks are all like playable. Um, and do have like ways to beat different decks. I'm actually gonna drop Roaring Moon to Dunsparce down. Um, I think this deck, I don't know, Roaring Moon EX just isn't a super great Pokemon. It's good. It one shots everything, but I'm just not a big fan of the deck. I feel like you want to go turbo or not turbo. And the Dunsparce is like kind of weird, and I just don't love any of the synergy of the deck. I don't think it's a terrible deck. Um, but I'm gonna put it in C tier. Same thing with Future Hands. Future Hands is very linear. Um, yeah, Future Hands is the deck that runs Iron Hands EX and Miraidon and Iron Crown EX, and that's mostly it. It can run other stuff, but um, it's all right. It can win. It's a really good ladder deck. I would actually say it is the best ladder deck in the game, but ladder deck for like grinding because you'll probably win. I don't know. I generally win like probably over 50%, not like drastically over, but a little over 50%. Um, but even if you're winning 50%, you are moving up, assuming you're not in Arceus. So it's a great like ladder deck because you'll just go 50% and the games are fast and you'll just get like easy wins. But yeah, Roaring Moon to Dunsparce, Future Hands, all right. I'm gonna put the rest of like the ancient future decks here. Ancient Box, I guess, is here. I know it's not like the worst deck in the game, but it's really slow. So yeah. Great Duskmill, I think is actually pretty bad. I have seen it win. It is a little scary to go against. So I guess it'll be at the bottom of C. I just don't think this deck. Um, I don't know. I think it might have been patched, but it might not have been. There's like a glitch involving certain cards in the deck, but it's an all right deck. And what else belongs here? I guess Dalgamatang will be here. I'll put it like in the middle of the tier. And yeah, I think that's about it. The rest of these decks, I think, will all go in D tier. I actually have two raging. Most of these decks just aren't very good. I'm not gonna order these decks. I don't think. I don't think there's really much to say about them. I put this here. This should be there. So I guess Raging Bolt Lost Zone's like okay. I'm actually gonna bump this up to C. Lost Zone's a pretty good deck, so any Lost Zone. I think this is actually a pretty solid way of playing Lost Zone. I'll put it top of C. Raging Bolt, Sandy Shocks. I think Future Box has like some potential. Cloth Electrode's actually like all right. Miraidon, straight Miraidon's okay. I don't know. I think it's kind of a. I haven't seen it too much, and it's not like that good, but it's all right. I wouldn't really choose to play it over like the Roaring Moon deck or the Future Hands deck or really most of like these basic base decks. Goldengo is actually all right, but it's whatever. I wouldn't really choose to play it over most of these A tier decks, which honestly are kind of similar. Chimpabax, Caliber, and Goldengo to me are pretty similar decks. You just need lots of energy. You go in one shot stuff with your two prizer. But Goldengo is a stage one. Of course, you don't need a stage two into play, but your stage one's getting knocked out every turn. Your engine's kind of, I don't know, it doesn't feel as good a lot of the time. Does that mean there should be like a 3-tier gap? Yeah, I think so. I think Goldingo is pretty bad. Like, I think it's outclassed by a lot of these decks. Gouging Fire, Raging Bolt, Sandy Shocks. Like, what are you doing here? Raging Bolt, Sandy Shocks is not good. It's not the worst deck, but it will struggle to set up. I think Roaring Moon is better in pretty much every scenario. Same thing with Gouging Fire. Roaring Moon's probably better in almost every scenario. Or Future Hands, they're just able to like do about the same amount of stuff, except they are I don't know. I guess Raging Bolt Lost Zone is better than Raging Bolt Sandy Shocks. Then Future Hand is better than, or Roaring Moon to Dunsparce is better than Gouging Fire. That's kind of how I'd view it. Future Hands isn't really the same. But yeah, there you go. Here is my official ranking of all the decks in the game. As I said, within the tiers, you could switch things around a bunch, and yeah, obviously the most important stuff is like the top section here. Still not a believer in Ancient Box. I've played against it a lot. I occasionally lose to it, but not that commonly. It just doesn't seem so strong. It seems like it just misses KOs. It struggles against big Pokemon, and it has not really any versatility. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there is some potential in the deck, but I'm not a big fan of it. I'm not a big fan of the Dunsparce. The card's not super good. It's not terrible. It has value in their time, so it's really nice, but a lot of the time it's not that good. And yeah, so some of my opinions have changed, though. I do admit Espathra is not like insanely good, but it is good against Charizard. Yes, Radiant Charizard and certain things can cause issues, but it's still pretty good against Charizard. Um, I mean, if you look at just the two Pokemon, Espathra EX versus Charizard EX, Espathra EX just like one-shot Charizard, and Charizard doesn't necessarily one-shot it back. It's a big strain on your resources. So yeah, I will say Espathra, I do think Bayonet is not very good in the deck, though. That is complete trash against Charizard because, well, okay, if you stop them from air canning, it's good, but um, most of the time it's complete trash because it's just getting a one-shotted and it doesn't really do much damage. Um, so I do not think Bayonet EX is very good. I don't think it's that good in general. I think Venomoth is better, but I think especially in Espathra Zadu, I think you want Espathra Zadu and then Scizor, which I actually showcased. I've showcased it a few times. It's a pretty good deck. So that Snorlax, I guess I should talk about this deck. I either just showcased it or will showcase it soon, and it's a pretty solid deck. Obviously, you can go ahead and just trap stuff. I think it is worse than Pidgeot Control by a bit, but it's still a pretty good deck. I am tempted to put Pidgeot Control number 2. As I said, though, the A tier could really be switched around a lot. Same thing with B tier, though I think I like the ordering here more. I didn't really talk about Arceus. This deck's fine. There's not too much to say. It's a little weird. There's Arceus alone Vulpix V-Star. Here, and so yeah, it's like here, and I think that's like pretty solid, and I'm grouping that in. But yeah, there you go. There's my list. It's a top 10 current standard pre-Twilight Masquerade. But I hope you enjoyed. If you did, consider subscribing to the channel, liking, comment down below your thoughts. As always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.